Okay, and we're starting. So what I'm going to do today is, like I said, it's going to be sort of meta because I'll be talking about how I do this with a class, and then and sort of just point out some stuff, like I was saying with the chat function, how it really is a great little marker for taking roll. But it's also, if you say, hey, during this session today, I want all of you to ask me a question. I want you to stop. I want you to ask me a question. Now, I'm not going to do this with you guys. But with a class, I might do that. Or what I might do if I have a large class, I'll have like a little roster for each class where someone has to ask an informed question. It's just cool because it gives them permission to speak up. If you're not asking questions because you're shy, well, this gives you permission. Or if you're not asking questions because you don't want to be that guy, which I totally get also, this is permission giving for that. So and then if I ask them to always ask a question during the class and always go to chat and put their name in as they ask it, and tell them the logic behind that, then like I said, it's just sort of a cool feature. Anyways, right now, Ashley, John, and Sam are here, and real quickly, I'll start with you, Ashley. And guys, since there's just 4 of us here, just turn on your mic anytime you want, and feel free to talk. Ashley, how familiar are you with my courses broadly? Are you up to speed on sort of kind of or not?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. How's about you, John?
I think you just started kind of mucking around with it. So I feel, I'm coming from D2L and desire to learn. And so,
okay.
I mean, the core essence is very similar. So, I've got the basic functions down, I think. I had some small questions about that they said they'd get back to me with down there at Transylvania, but like how to enter and weight grades for like extra credit, so it doesn't go against the total. It's just we had that feature in my last LMS, so I don't know if there's a way to do that in
yeah.
Okay, and yeah, but
yeah, we can touch on that kind of stuff. Sure.
I feel pretty comfortable. I mean, with the basics.
Good.
So.
Alrighty, excellent. Well, also, just so you know, everyone feels comfortable about asking stuff, I've got a sort of a little walkthrough I have planned here, and like I said, if you have questions, let me know. And what I'm going to do is, like I said, be very meta and sort of describe every step I take. So what I opened with was sharing a file within Collaborate. If you do that, you can also type on it, and you can sketch on it. Now, what's cool is if you're using the new boards in Patton and you want to use a file, say you're doing a chemistry teacher, if you share a file, the share file feature within Collaborate always has a pen feature. Now, if you're using PowerPoint, which is what I'll be working off of mostly today, you also have a pen feature that'll work in PowerPoints, which means if you're teaching like chemistry, say, I know, John, your history. Ashley, what is your field, if you don't mind me asking?
Biology.
Okay, great. Anyways, so if for instance, if you're doing chemistry and you have all those symbols and that kind of jazz, then you have your PowerPoint up, you can just choose the ink feature on PowerPoint. Now, the other nice thing about Collaborate is it will allow me to talk with my camera on while I'm sharing a file, and you can always go to the lower left-hand corner or right-hand corner, I don't remember which, and click the person who's presenting, and you'll have that as the main screen, or not, and then you'll have the PowerPoint that's being shared. And you can also now, Sam, and I don't know if you're using this a whole lot previously, Ashley, and welcome, Tessa. You can also have a grid view that has up to 25, which is new. It's sort of like Zoom. So for people who are not who are familiar with Collaborate, that's sort of a big deal, because I ask my students to always have their cameras on. When I'm doing a PowerPoint, when I'm doing this kind of thing, I don't, because the fact is, if a faculty member is prepping their classes and is courteous enough to have me on the background, that's fine too. But just, I always ask them to have their camera on. If they can't do that, I'll pursue it, and I'll say, well, why can't you? Do you need me to help you round up a camera? Because I'll be pretty aggressive about it. And then another thing that I'll show you guys real fast is I'm going to always share one screen. Well, you can PowerPoint on it. I can bring up other visuals on it, and I'll always have that sharing. And if I'm doing a high flex class, I'll always share the screen that's on the board all the time. They can click back and forth, and that works. But also, it allows me to bring up anything. It allows me to use the ink feature on the new board. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to share screen, and I'm going to choose a PowerPoint. I'm not choose PowerPoint. I'm going to use a share screen. I'm going to choose the application screen, which I know my PowerPoint will be showing up on. I'm also, as I do that, I'm going to choose a little box in the corner that says share system audio. I know that some of the PowerPoint I'm showing you today has some audio on it, and I always want to have that on. So anyways, what I'm going to do now is you're going to see the same slide that I opened with. Another thing, just in terms of best practice, to my mind, is if you have people logging in and they can do it 10 minutes in advance, always having a screen up that says, hey, you're in the right place is good practice. So when you got here, you'll notice I had a file up there already. Usually I won't have my camera on, but I still will. Another thing that I'll show you, now when I do this, it'll be a picture in a picture for a moment. So I'm sliding over what I'm looking at to control this thing. And what I would do is I'd always start with telling the faculty member, my students, that if you go down and mouse over this icon that has your initial or your face, and you click that, then you get the chance to put up an away symbol. That's crucial if you're teaching full time, because a full class is online, because I require them, if they're stepping away, maybe you have to change a diaper, maybe their dog's barking or somebody showed up at the door, I require them to hit away. That's a big deal, because if I ask for everyone to give feedback and I don't get feedback from somebody immediately, the whole class, I drop them, they're booted from the class. And then lastly, this last sort of pre-game thing I'll share, and that is, that's the rule. They know it. I'm not being ugly. But if I have a person set their head down on their desk, which we've all seen, I'll ask them to leave class and go get some rest. I'm not trying to be ugly. But what I'll do is I'll ask questions. If I do, though, look at this. You can put happy or sad. These disappear after 60 seconds, which is great. If they raise their hand, it stays up till I put it down. So I'll say, hey, are you following me? And everyone knows the rule is they put happy or they put sad. They put surprised or confused. I don't use those so much because, they can just ask if they're confused. Faster and slower, really, everybody will always say slower with me, so I don't ask for that. But when they hit away, it shuts off their camera and their mic. So that's sort of cool. And if I see they have an away symbol up by their name, and this is clearly when you look at the population who's there, then I see aways there, and if I ask them a question, I don't boot them from the class because they had to step away. However, I take role in my online synchronous classes by having everyone go to a little quiz function in the first page, and it says, did you arrive on time and leave on time, and were there the whole time? And then if they say yes, they get 100% for attendance. Then that just goes right in the grade book. But if they say they came late or they left early, well then they get an 80, say. If they were bumped partway through the class, I asked them to send me an email explaining that, because they say, oh, I'm sorry, you bumped me because I wasn't paying attention. And see, all of this is just accountability, and it's not daunting for them. And that's why I mentioned this. So I also have an agree and disagree, which also disappear after 60 seconds. So if I'm asking you guys questions today, and like I said, no big deal, because if you're doing other stuff while I'm talking, that's fine. But if I'm asking you questions, please hit agree or disagree. Right now, just to see if everyone can do it, go ahead and everyone give me, and I'll tick this off the screen here. Everyone give me a happy face, pretty please. And I have to be looking at my attendees for this to work. And I'm seeing one happy face. And Tessa, John, and Ashley, what you have to do to get that is you go down over, you mouse over this little icon down here, and then you'll see there's a happy and there's a sad. And I want everyone to show me that they're happy, pretty please. Okay, Ashley's happy. John and Tessa still not getting the love. But anyways, I'll leave it at that. Just so you know, I'll do that a lot. And that's because you can make a class fully interactive. It's just awesome. I love teaching online, and I know not many other people do, but when I ask a question and I get those responses, I'll tell a little bit more about that in a minute. Let's go ahead and I'll start into the session itself here. And what I can do is, because I'm sharing my screen, I can advance through a PowerPoint. And if I were teaching in the other room, what I could do is I could come over here and I could come down to the corner. If you probably won't be able to see this because of the contrast, but in a PowerPoint, for those who like to teach with it, and I'm crazy about teaching with visual reinforcement, in the lower left-hand corner, there are the little arrows backwards and forwards. They have the ink icon right here. Hey, guys, can you see what I'm pointing at here? Can you see down here, Sam? Can you see that where I'm mousing over? There's a pen icon on your screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Well, I want you to see that. The reason I do is because
I use the agree button to try to model that too.
Yeah. So what you can do is, if you guys use PowerPoint, if you have the ink feature plugged into and turned on your laptop when you're teaching those new classes, then you can always turn on that thing. You can go to pen, and then you can write on it. This is very, very valuable. But if that way you can go through, if you're teaching chemistry, or I can see John, if you're have a map up there and you're showing stuff. It is so sweet now with these new boards that you'll be able to just have that immediately inform your PowerPoint, and you'll be able to touch the board, see that, turn the ink on, and use it. And then when you close out your PowerPoint, it's going to say, hey, do you want to keep those annotations? And you can save that. You say yes, and you can save that as another PowerPoint if you want to come back to that, or you want to share it with your class later. So that's just all meta about how I'm going to be using this today. Right now, I'm going to come back and shut off the pen. Or at least try to. Great. And then, maybe no, it's still on. Okay. Okay, it's still giving me that, but that's fine. I'm sure it'll stop as I go to the next slide. So what we're going to talk about today, it's called advanced. It's just stuff that I've bumped into that I really think is helpful. And if you're not familiar with my courses, it's going to be a little trickier, John. But I know that for you, it's going to still be a lot like D2L when you get into it. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is I'm going to walk through just a handful of options, and I'll give you an overview of that in a moment. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start though with sharing an article I read in March, and I have found this really well. I say revelatory. I believe it's true. It's what in the Harvard Magazine they were sharing basically. What they just covered in this conference I was at, and that was, what'd you guys learn during COVID? That's the thing, right? And well, it turns out that for this, they come up here and look what they say here. They say, and I'm skipping ahead obviously, but for the Harvard Future of Teaching and Learning Task Force, you go down there and it says they have these 3 things they've learned. Their little triptych there, but I'm just going to go with the second one for now and give you 3 more quotes from this. It's just great. First of all, they found accelerating the creation and use of short-form digital content, which is what today's about. Learning units, exercises, assessments that differ from traditional semester-long courses, but are useful for both campus-based classes and a broad range of online formats. So that's pretty interesting, that whole concept of a short-form digital content. And I'm going to be stressing that as a point of remediation, a point of clarification, and and really something that you can assign after the fact if someone's not getting it. If you've got something that's really sticky, and in biology there's a lot of this, I know. And if you're teaching anatomy, which I'll be covering at length today, just because as a demo, you'll see the same stuff. That there's a lot of stuff that's hard to get, but if they get that one thing, that's the lever for getting the rest of it, right? So look at this. The article goes on to say, and meta concept here. I'm using citations here. I'm using it on a PowerPoint. This is easy to do, but it helps the students see where I'm getting it. If I am quoting literature, having literature show up. If you're lecturing, ever having this, I think it's good. It's good practice. It takes a minute or two, but still it's worthwhile. So let's go on. And the more recent experiments brought forth important discoveries about using online tools to engage students, to test their command of material frequently. Now that's cool, because that's what we can do with us online stuff, depending on your course. I know, for Sam, and I imagine, with a lot of the composition, checking in on them all the time, maybe that's not so valuable as it is if you're teaching something that's really sort of fact aggregation. It's capital, intellectual capital you're trying to aggregate, right? For that, you can check that frequently. You can enable them to learn from one another. Now, I won't go down that rabbit hole today, but breaking people into breakout groups for 10 minutes and giving them very clear directions. What's that 10 minutes going to do? They get to know each other. It's sort of cool. And then it says, and form their own learner communities, even their online communities. I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and they were saying how they really did get I think it was Mary, our new chemistry person, was saying how much she got out of getting to know these online cohorts. And then a new form of collaborative experiences that enrich, it says residential as well as the online groups. So, okay, and then just one, well, actually two more here. These two quotes, I will leave with this, but I'm going to be referencing these through the entire conversation today. So these are the two quotes. I squished them together. The pandemic forced all faculty members, students, and staff to think creatively and more explicitly about teaching. And then it says we had to. Well, yeah, that's sort of cool. Yesterday, I know John and Sam were in a session where they were saying how really, if you have to sort of focus on the essentials, maybe you're leaving out the complexities, and that's not always good. But just for the record, thinking about that is, I think we got a lot out of it. And the last thing I'll quote from this, and edX is Harvard's online show that's been terrific and free for a decade now. It had generally been known from edX and other formats that a full-length lecture transmitted and disseminated to a screen. So a full-length lecture that you just record it and send it out there into space. What Anand calls sending the class out like a PDF, which I love that reference, results in passive experiences. Well, yeah, it turns out a full lecture, if you don't have this interaction, is really, well, I won't pursue it. I'll finish the article. Most learners haven't the attention span to stay focused on what is transpiring. As the report puts it, long lectures that were familiar in the residential classroom or to which faculty and students had become accustomed did not work well online. And as Sam pointed out yesterday, maybe the kids from Harvard it's better, but they found just the opposite. Smith said he and colleagues quickly realized that via Zoom they had to teach different kinds of content and less than they would try to convey in a class session. I think we all agree with that. So they broke up their courses into smaller chunks and exercises and began to use the interactive and communication utilities. So stuff we probably know. With all that, anybody have a comment on that? You can just turn it on. Yeah, go right ahead.
I think, and again, this is just sort of my personal opinion, but I think for me, I noticed that most academics especially at any level, but at the community college and other places I've been, and my own experiences being lectured to by an academic, is it's apparent in many of them, many others in circumstances, that they did not have formal pedagogical training. And I went back and got a master's of art in teaching, which is different than education. So it's an active sort of praxis-based, practice. How do you teach? And I think that's what I guess, rethinking my thought on online courses, is I think that what it's done is it's brought a lot of the things, like you talked about, small, chunky, and variety, things you would use in an 8th grade, social studies class to keep the kids engaged, are really the same things you're talking about for, chemistry or physics at the college level, or history, or so I kind of see where you're going with that comment, those comments earlier. That I think that the Zoom has forced force the sort of the active pedagogy and learning the techniques to teach to spread to the post-secondary level. That's just sort of my observation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do.
I think that, yeah, sorry. For me, I teach a completely online class, and it's very hard to get a time where a majority of them can meet or get on, you know,
Right.
and it's not mandatory. So that's
Right.
kind of where I have, you know, issues with them. And then it just feels like, you know, I'm in the room by myself for,
Right.
you know, the hour. And
Right.
I would like to use that time, or I do typically use that time to record things and put it up. But then again, I'm like, are they watching it? Is there
Right.
a way to actually record something outside of Collaborate, and then put it in and make it as a mandatory watch, like in the Moodle?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, there's several ways. I won't go into detail with that right now, Tessa, but let's talk about that because it's great. And I actually set up like a little mini studio next to my room, and if you're on campus, that one can use for that same function. But yeah, I'll talk about some of that even today when we're going through this, because I'm also going to talk about. Well, actually, I'll show you another thing meta-wise. By the way, this I'm gonna go to an organizing interface here on PowerPoint. Now, the fact is you can use this yourself, and then I can hop ahead. So I anticipate certain questions during the course of a session. And what I'm doing is it's sort of hysterical. I can't get the I can't get my pen shut off, which is sort of funny that I'm giving this example. Okay. Anyways, so what you can do is you can pull this up and you can go to different slides. So what we're going to cover today, and Tessa, this will touch on some of your stuff, and when we get to the rest of it, but we're going to talk about media anchors. And then we're going to talk about some assessment strategies and the advanced grading and the PDF markup. There's some ways to do that where your face is part of that I really think will inform some of what you're saying, especially if you can't get a synchronized session. You can record a synchronized session and then make the people who can't see it watch it, but really it's almost like punishment. And then also how the resource collections work in this. I'm going to walk through these, but I'm going to be talking about media anchors a lot. Media anchors are basically what I just described from the Harvard Magazine, and that is the short form content creation that one can do. Let's see. So let me go back to. I'm going to hop around in this PowerPoint for that purpose, and there again, like I said, on a meta level, this makes sense to me. That this is something that faculty should know how to do. Basically, if you can't operate PowerPoint fairly in a sophisticated fashion, then, you know, perhaps you should learn that. Okay, so let's just start off with the media anchors piece. As I said, a media anchor is anything that you have that is important enough that you're saying, you know, it is hard for my students to get this. And I'm going to take some time, maybe half a day, to create, you know, a 10-minute piece that explains this, that they can see repeatedly. Your on-the-ball students may see it, you know, right out of the gate. Your students who are struggling might need to see it 3 or 4 times to get that. And I'll go through that today with a class that I made, and it's going to be about a 6-minute video I'm going to show you here in a moment. And what that's going to be, it's going to be on an Anatomy and Physiology 1 class that I helped someone put together. I know nothing about it, but what I want you to do is just take a look at this for me, and just humor me that I'm doing this live would take me the rest of the class. So what I have is a media anchor here. So here it is. It's 6 minutes. Okay, this is going to be a quick overview of a course I just put together that has a lot of auto grading built into it. Now, it's a very hands-on show. And I know it's stalling, but Owen, keep it going. Kind of a class, anatomy and physiology. And because of that, there's a lot of visuals that we have to tie to some language. And then we also not only need to show that, but we want to have the students work on these different projects, but we don't want to have the instructors spend a ton of time having to grade and go through all the minutia that really is part of this class. So with that said, I'm just going to show you a handful of things right now that we've done for this class. Okay, first of all, the way the instructor has it set up is she wants to start with students downloading some notes in Word so they can mark them up. And then she wants to have them look at a PowerPoint that she's doing a voiceover for. And then after they take those notes, they're going to save them as a PDF and upload them. So let me show you that real fast. So what we're looking at here is just that we're combining two things. We're having a document that's been created. This is structured note taking. So basically the outline of the notes are there so the students can fill in the blanks. And then below that, of course, we have the PowerPoint. So what we've done is we've combined those two resources into one thing. And then when you hit play.
Anatomy and Physiology 1. This is the first course of 2 classes.
And another nice thing with this is that they can also be looking at the closed caption when they're looking at these. And this assignment is throughout the entire course, but I just want to throw that out there that you can have a Word document, a PowerPoint that has a voiceover, and you can also ask them to then turn that in. Now, when they turn it in, it's going to look like this. This is the instructor view. The instructor goes out. You can see 1 of 10 have submitted this, and it's ungraded. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to click into this as the instructor, and then I'm going to say I'd like to grade that. They can mark up the PDF and scroll down. And now you'll go to the bottom of this, and there's these little tabs. You click this one, and it will show you what is the entire rubric. You click the other one, it'll show both. You click that one, it'll just show the markup page. So you can slide back and forth. And because I have a rubric for this, it's really simple to walk through, click those points, make a comment or two, put some marks on the document itself, and I'm done. In this course, which is anatomy, there's a lot of basically show and tell, as I had mentioned. Now, if I click into these, what I've taken is I've taken the Word documents where the instructor has put in this information that they would like a student to understand and memorize, and then I've turned it into some visuals that will help students be able to do that in a more visually friendly fashion. So what they can do is they can walk through and they can just sort of slide these in, and they're allowed to take this on multiple occasions. So you can see how that works, and if they hit check, and they're not all done, it will give them a chance to retry. Okay, let me show you a couple more. We also have a simple fill in the blank with H5P. This will automatically inform the gradebook, which is handy, and you can see what it looks like here. And she's even offered what the choices can be. And we have another drag and drop here where the student is supposed to be able to sort out these various sections of the abdomen, and you can see how easily this works, and then the students can once again check that and find out what their progress is. And because the instructor had a lot of matching, the quiz function within the MyCourses does have a pretty good drop down for matching. So they can just do this and walk through and try to sort out what these answers are. And there again, it's fairly user friendly, easy to do, and it's auto gradable. Next page, and you'll see the same thing with fill in the blanks here. So there's some nice features within the quiz they can use for that as well. Another sticking point in this class is basically getting students to understand the skeletal system and to memorize it. And what this instructor wanted to do is she went through and she wanted to record actually doing the physical demonstration of what the skeleton is. So what we did is we took like 7 or 8 different units and broke them down into 4 different videos that the students can then see.
So welcome to our friend the skeleton. We're going to go through all the bones and hopefully help you with naming these nooks and crannies and lower arm bones, which are the radius and ulna. Now, how you tell the difference between the radius and ulna?
So you can see there's a number of the H5P elements that we put in here for a lot of these visualization. We've added some quizzes depending on what is the best fashion for grading something. So one can see that there are a whole number of these different activities that were required for this course, and they broke down into activities, which would be assignments, H5P, or formative quizzes. And we had a whole bunch of those. But let me show you a couple other things really before we sign off here. And that is at the bottom of each of these, we have the actual entire PowerPoint, but we've had the instructor upload those as slides. So what will happen in the Google Slides, it's really easy for the student to go through there without having a PowerPoint or having the correct platform. So we did that for one of the backups. We also added the entire PowerPoint for someone who would care for that, for the PowerPoint itself. So those are the 2 additional resources. But then notice this at the very bottom. We have a folder here. The folder, if I open this as an instructor, I can still see these. I can click these and individually download these elements, or I can hide it from the students, which is what I've done, because these are the source documents for this chapter. And by putting it in a folder, you can click into this and you can manipulate those fairly readily when you're in settings, or you can download the whole folder as a faculty member as well. So this is a terrific element for wrapping up your course and keeping those source documents for each chapter, maybe at the bottom of one page, for other people who may be using it. Now that was a whole lot, but that's just sort of the skins the surface of really what we were trying to do with this one course. Thank you for your time. Okay, so that was a quick run through of basically what's in that course, but that shows media anchors, and it also shows a couple other features that I'm going to sort of walk us through right now. First of all, for this course, I created a lot of these interactives. Now, for anatomy and physiology, so much of it, as I said, is memorization. They can use this as a memorization tool. So, and I can show you how that kind of thing was built as well. We had a couple of these that are crucial. That if you get this, you're on the pathway to learning the rest of the hundreds and hundreds of names that are part of that. Also, this instructor wanted to do one video piece that went through this entire lecture. She lectures. Teaching this online without having this demo was tough. So basically, you can all see a lot of ways where if there's like one or two really important things that your lecture, you don't think you can replace that, then having the short form media, as the article has said, really can be very, just a total winner versus saying, oh, it's into chapter 7. And now with that said, let me move forward to this other piece I ran through, and this is a different kind of an assignment. And for those of you who have done these, tell me if this makes sense to you or see the advantage. I'll ask you in a moment to give me your take on it. Now, so with that, I'm gonna basically get us to basically how to grade this tool that you just saw, and this comes to basically the second feature here, the assessment strategy thing. And this is part of what you had mentioned, Tessa, too. And I'll show you that it's sort of interesting how one can do this. So what I'm going to do to go through the advanced grading, the PDF markup, the RSI feedback options here is basically a show and tell. Now, as I'm doing this, and if you were doing this from your classroom, you could do the same thing. I'm only sharing screen 2 here, and I know that. So if I just go to pull up the browser, and I have the browser already set for this class, and I do, it'll just take up the screen. And then once that happens, I can then operate from here without hopping in and out of the PowerPoint. But this is the assignment that I was that I was showing earlier that she had. Now this is just basically an assignment. In the assignment, I put in this text for what they have to do, and then I have to say they have to have the frame notes doc is structured note taking. Now, if you guys are you familiar with the concept of structured notes? John's giving me a yes. Okay. So the idea is that you've provided an outline for their notes, and I've got another lecture on the research on this. Especially for novice learners, not for advanced learners. For novice learners, this will double the retention if they're working off the structured notes. And that's another reason why I'm really big on PowerPoints, because PowerPoints themselves can be structured notes. But look what I've got here. I've got this download that downloads a Word document. So they have those structured notes on their side. Then the other media anchor here is these great PowerPoints she did, because anatomy, a lot of it is just show and tell. So what she did is she did these, as I showed a part of in the clip. She has these great pieces.
Shortly. So we will have some tissues that become epithelial, lining tissue.
So she's got this. So you go through this whole little mini lecture. It's not passive, because they're having to take those notes. But the trouble is she was then having to upload the Word document. Well, how do you grade that? It's tricky. So here's how we grade it. We grade it by basically coming over here and we go grade. And now what's going to happen is, as an instructor, this is what I showed in the video. As an instructor, what I'll have, I can change users. I may not be in a live course. No, apparently I'm not. Let me go to this one instead. Okay, so here's what the student sees on their side in this assignment. They've downloaded this, and now they upload this. And then they will see on the other side, basically the grade the instructor will give. Oh, no, I apologize. This is actually the instructor's interface. So stay with me. I hope I didn't lose you there. For the instructors, I'd set this up in advance and forgot I did it. I'm so good. So here's what my instructor sees. I'm going through their notes. This actually weren't filled out, obviously. And now I'm going through this and I noticed that, she's, this individual has said something interesting that I wanted to highlight here. Okay. And then they say something about this. Now, I don't know what this is, but I can go through all these pages real fast. I've done this a lot. This is my class. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And I'm using a highlighter here, or I could use, a tool to mark out the stuff. But then watch. What I do is I come to my rubric. I just open that up here. Oops, there's the whole thing. There's my rubric. Now, I set this rubric up. It's not bad. Was it on time? Yeah, it was right on time. I just said put in the correct title and that. So now she didn't do that correctly. And how thorough was it? Well, I thought I met expectations. So now I'm done. But what if I want to actually have some feedback, Tessa, that is a little bit more personal? What I can do, and this is what I think that what might help you, Tessa, in terms of having your face and your voice connected to this class. And this is true, folks, on just about all the grading assignments. Now we have these two features. We have this microphone and this camera. Now I'm using a mic and a camera right now with Collaborate. It's not going to work for me. But what I could do, and what I encouraging people to do who have just these fully online classes especially, is set up a rubric. Easy to go through and put in those scores. And so make sure it's meaningful to you. And then you can mark the grade a little bit. Another thing that I do is I will reach over and I'll capture part of the things they say if it's a written piece, and I'll post in here. I'll post here's what you said, and I'll quote them back to themselves, which is awesome because it means you're paying attention. But then I'll have this little video piece where I have 1 minute of given comments, and I hit that little record. My camera might come on just like that, and I go, hey, Carly, I really appreciate the work you put into this. It's just tremendous that you've gotten so much better this semester. Just work on these two features, and we're good to go. If I do that, then when Carly goes back to that, and let me show you the student interface. This is where that is. Now, I just pulled up a different browser that has Firefox with a student logged in. Now, Carly comes to this right here, and now what she's going to see when she goes to that is she's going to see this assignment, and then and here's the grading criteria, and then she can go in and sort of look. She'll be able to look at that video in real time on her side for this. So just so you know, what we're setting up on this side works on their side. So this is sort of a more advanced features and grading. But when I say RSI, that stands for regular substantive interaction, and we have to say in our online classes that we're giving them us, and this is a cool way to do that. So I just I'm big on this, as you can probably tell. With that said,
that's going to be huge for me.
Oh, good. I'm glad that's, and I'm going to have some tutorials built on this. I haven't yet because some of this is really new, but I'm hoping it's going to be worthwhile for people who are having to teach online. And I know, and John sounds like he's this kind of individual because when we were talking yesterday about how he conducts his classes, how it's important that he's making contact with these students. If you are, meeting in the ether, having this, I think, is pretty helpful. And with that, like I said, what I'm going to do now, being very meta, is I know I have these set up, and I've got a bunch of tabs ready here in case people ask about such and such a thing. So those are ready, but I also have my PowerPoint. So I bring my PowerPoint back up, same screen, and I can proceed right into the next section of this here. After that one, and then what I'm going to touch on is basically something else. This is like for people who are unfamiliar with or who are familiar with the LMS but maybe haven't played with H5P much. And H5P is how I created those sort of cartoon looking interactions, but there's a lot of other matching interactions that are fairly easy to make. And while we're not going to go into that in detail, I want to mention something in your LMS called a content bank for those things. The content bank is right here. At the bottom on the right-hand side of your LMS, you'll when you open up the settings on that side, you'll see at the bottom it says content bank. If you're wondering what a content bank is, it's basically this. It is where I put all the H5P interactions, excuse me, that I made for that class. Now, I can make them look like this, or I can come over here and I could have a list version view as well. But that's what a content bank is. It's not going to help you much if you are unfamiliar with H5P completely, but I wanted to sort of tell you what that is on your LMS. That's what that is. And then the other part that you're going to see are question banks every time you're working in that. So we have a content bank and we have a question bank. I'm just touching on those briefly. A question bank is where all your questions reside if you're making them or you've imported them. The trouble is, a question bank looks like this. So you can scroll up and down. You can have all kinds of stuff in there. And every time you import a class from one place to another, all the question banks move with it. So I'm just throwing it out there. If you need help with this moving forward, any of you, while today I'm not going to do a deep dive into it, I just want you to have a sense of what those are. And basically how they work. And then if we've got time or you're interested in the H5P stuff, I'll mention again about that. However, with that said, I also wanted to show, after we get out of that, this next section about what the folders are on the LMS presently. Okay, and this may be of interest to I would hope most of you, just as we turn a quick corner here. The folder tool has changed a little bit on the LMS this year. So if you're familiar, it looks like this. If I put in a folder, we all know what a folder is. You just put stuff in it, right? This works really well, though. It's surprising. It's not as cumbersome as the other things. So if you're familiar with this resource at all, and it's going to work if you have it for students' use. So it's open so students can see it. Maybe you have a whole bunch of really you think are important resources you would like to have people have access to, but really having it populate your LMS isn't fair to the student because it's just too much. However, you've got a few students in your class who are going to dig into this. Your students, and your field. So what you can get with this is if you click that little folder, it'll do a drop down, and the drop down will show you all these things. Here's what I'm using it for, though. And just consider if you want this. If you're making a bunch of tools as you're here for year after year, you make some tools, and a lot of these are Word docs. So the trouble is a Word document very often is going to be inaccessible. So a lot of these are inaccessible, but these are my source documents for all the stuff I made for that instructor. So what I see now is I have all these docs. Students aren't going to see them, but if I need to redo a PDF, if I have the Word version of that, it's easy. If I just have the PDF, making that accessible or altering that is sometimes a real hassle. So using the folder tool for that makes sense. So here's how that works. And another thing I'll show you on the, if you go to the settings on the folder, it will look like this, which means you can grab stuff, you can put subfolders within this, and you can organize it any way you'd like so that it makes sense to you or makes sense to the students. The other thing you can do, though, is if this is open in settings and you want to put a Word document in there, you can just go to your folder on your computer and drag it in there, and it's going to do this. It'll just show you a real fast way to upload. Now, so that's the folder tool, the content bank, and the question bank. I wanted to run through those just because they're I think really important. They've changed a little bit, and I wanted to throw that out there. So just recapping before we have it open up to questions or discussion. As I showed you earlier, I wanted you to sort of get your head wrapped around the concept of having these short form pieces that really are unique. And John said, it's like, it's basically maybe some of our classes we were serving our students better when we were treating them like 8th graders, and I don't mean to be insulting by that, but the fact is, having the organization and having some of these things to touch base on. But it depends on whether you're talking about advanced or novice learners. In a community college, very often we're leaning towards the novice. If you're preparing students for nursing and you have some high-end students, then the kind of helps you'd build are obviously going to be different. So I wanted you to know that, and then I wanted you to think about some of these other assessment strategies that you go along with these media anchors. And when you set that up, which we can talk, which I can be glad to show you some other time, or you can just contact me. When you set these up, set them up so you just do one thing, so you don't leave every grading option open. My students in this course were allowed to turn in just a PDF. That was the assignment. Turn in the PDF. I'll mark it up. Okay, so I set that so they could only turn in a PDF, and I set my rubric designed specifically for that, and then I set up how I was going to respond. It's all real fast and simple for me. So we just covered that, and then lastly, I wanted to familiarize you with the content banks, the question banks, and the folder structure. Those are sort of different. And if you as you make tests, I've got a tutorial on this, the LMS resource guide, but as you do tests, think about or look at that organizational structure, because you can lose the questions you've made and they disappear into that horrible question bank. Question bank by nature is a mess, but we can help you sort of fix that, and the value in those folders and the rest of that. With that said, let me stop sharing that and just get a sense from you guys. And Ashley, if you're still with us here, and if you're not, once again, no harm, no foul if you're prepping for a class. But Ashley, if you're with us, do you see anything that might be valuable to you, or about which you might have a question?
Yeah, no, it was really helpful for me because I'm actually teaching that AMP1 class. So you and I talked about it a little bit last week, but it was helpful.
Ashley, every time I see your name, I always see your last name, Deku. Am I saying it right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So when I saw Ashley, it didn't even cross my mind that you were that Ashley. Sorry.
Yeah, so that was perfect for me because we sort of got through all the stuff my students will be using.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And like I said, the folders in there at the bottom of every one of the chapters, I've tried to put in the developers, well, not the subject matter experts notes in there, all in the Word form, so you can sort of see what was there. And if you need to change stuff, you all have that opportunity. So I'm glad. Thanks, Ashley.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin.
What about you? Yeah. What about you, John? Was any of that helpful, or are we in the weeds because you're still transitioning from D2L?
Oh, no, it was very helpful. Like I said, most of my limitations are just a lack of meta knowledge, and I'm used to the traditional classroom. I did about a year of Zoom, but never enjoyed it, just kind of suffered through it. So, and unfortunately, during that compressed COVID period, we didn't have a lot of professional development time. So it was just drinking through our fire hose. And so some of my frustrations just, I'm kind of long in the tooth, and I'm trying to transition, and I think this is very helpful. Right. It opens up doors, and I know I can do a lot more. I just have to get comfortable using the different components. But I enjoy that, and it makes sense to me.
All right. I sure appreciate that. And Tessa, you say that RSI stuff. Some of that is going to inform some of your challenges, perhaps.
Yes, the feedback I think is really going to be a game changer for me, because I would much prefer to speak in something, and that way they can hear me, hear my thoughts and my feedback for them, rather than having to, type it in for everyone. So I really am going to utilize that feature for sure. I guess the only other thing that I work full-time at Brevard High School, and we're Google based pretty much.
Right.
So I'm kind of used to doing that type, my brain's worked in that instead of the Moodle. But I think for me, the biggest thing it seems cumbersome, at least, is getting the videos kind of uploaded. And I've tried the YouTube a couple of times, and you put it through and then put it back into the Moodle. It's just, I would like something where they can see me speaking it, and then I don't know, to me, the Google Meet just works.
Right.
So it's just flows easier. And I haven't been
Right.
able to fully transition into, the Moodle, Lean Canvas, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Yeah. The workflow on that is a bit of a hassle. I agree. And, I would argue that, 3 times in, you're going to be doing as best as you can. It's never going to get faster than that. But still, with that said, it's still doable. But if you need help, yell at me with that too, Tessa, because I'll be glad to help if there's a way to simplify that.
Okay.
And Sam, go ahead.
Sorry. Can you also, because I had original kind of a shell that Ben Kish had made, and then I kind of got, pieces of the shell and I've added to it and modified it and things. And when I pull some of it over, some of the content, I don't know if my content, some of it gets lost or has been lost over, the several years. So is that something you can look at, or would that be something?
Yeah, I sure can. Yeah. Send me an email on that, and if anything got kerwonky in a export or import, it happens a lot. You can let me know, and I can compare the two and find out where the issue is. What I wanted to do, Sam, is ask you a question. Are you a person who is? Do you ever like doing any kind of PowerPointy kind of stuff with your classes live, face to face? Are you using those boards?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've utilized them, face to face, also synchronously. It looks like they've added some stuff to the PowerPoint features in Collaborate, which I'm very excited about, where I can see all my slides at once. I'm more excited to get into the classroom and be able to write on them rather than with my mouse, because I feel like the writing is really sloppy with the mouse, so that'll be neat. But a lot of the stuff about video uploading and stuff that Tessa said, I feel like it's just sort of the cumbersomeness of the LMS more than anything that we can do, right? So like I found in some cases, if I'm making short videos, it's almost easier to create a brand new video through Collaborate where they can just click the link and then go and view it later than trying to upload those things through YouTube, just because I'm sure you've run into this, Kevin. It can take forever to upload on YouTube and then go back and have a link and all that good stuff. So
there's several steps, and if there's short pieces you're doing and you just want to record straight and Collaborate, that makes complete sense. And the thing about that is, if you, as you probably all know, if you open Collaborate by yourself, you can be your own, you can do all that, share a screen and do the voiceover and stuff in real time like that as well. The downside about that is those disappear if it's something that you want to keep, obviously. But if it's something just, especially short pieces, it's fine. The long stuff, if they start running out of room, it's hard to say when they're going to delete that. But I take your point. A lot of that is easier, especially if you have students who have the facility to get there.
Right. What I've found useful, you're exactly right about that problem. What I've found useful is when I do make a longer video, particularly in the settings on Collaborate, as long as you've checked make this available to download. Then what I do is, after I've recorded it via Collaborate, I'll go back in and I'll download it like to my desktop or somewhere, so that I have it if I want it for the next semester. Because you're right, they just randomly disappear when you're copying over a new shell. Sometimes they'll be there and sometimes they won't. I noticed this summer, for example, that a lot of the ones I had from like spring weren't, when I copied the shell over, I wasn't able to get back to them to download them.
Yeah. And I would just, on the YouTube side, because I encourage everyone to use that. But on the YouTube side, I encourage people to be really diligent about every time you do an upload, create a playlist with that class and that semester even. So, because you can put it in multiple playlists, but if you have one playlist for, Comp 2, Tuesdays and Thursdays 3, however you want to label that thing, and you always put in that same playlist, then organizing those and getting rid of them too is all of it's really easy, because the cool thing about the relationship you have with YouTube through the school is you're the channel's owner, which allows you to have maximum capability to do stuff with it. Hey guys, I'm not going to keep you longer, but I really appreciate you sitting in on this. And If you have comments or stuff, put them in chat. I will be looking at that later. And anything else that I can do for you, you know, this is my job, and it gives me great pleasure to work with folks on any of this stuff. So thanks again, and I hope I see you during the week.